Welcome to Backlog, the show where we make good on Steam sale promises. I'm Calyx.
I'm Sasha.
I'm Christian.
And this week's game is Dreaming Sarah. Please note that we will be getting into major spoiler territory in our deep dive, so if you don't want to get spoiled for the game, you should probably put this episode aside for a while. But if you finish the game, or you don't mind spoilers, then settle on in. Dreaming Sarah is a side-scrolling puzzle game? I guess, adventure game? Yeah. I was looking up the Asteristic Studio a little bit ago. It's the Brazilian little game studio that seems to be just a couple people. Andre Chagas Silva is listed as the developer, with Anthony Septim providing music. How far did you get in Dreaming Sarah? What was your experience of it?
Well, I didn't finish it. I really tried. How do you even track your progress? Would it just be by the items you collected? Or...
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, there's the items. There are 8 in the wheel, I think. 8 or 9 slots that you have, and then you collect the items around the world. There's also, if you back out of the game to, like, the main menu, there's a little thing called statistics, so you can, like, click on and see the percent of the game that you finished, and then secrets you found and other stats. It's a little weird because I actually quit out and then played it again. I tried to pick up a section that I missed the first time when I finished it. And I went from like 90% complete to 80% complete, and I'm like, okay.
Well, you should have explored more of the game then.
I know even less about the game than I did when I finished it.
The other way is there's an item list that has, I believe, 16 item slots. That does not include the 8 items that you have the ability to use. So there's getting all of those things and then unlocking all the achievements. And I'm not sure if there's anything else for determining your progress, I guess. I did finish it. I did not do so without a walkthrough. I made it to almost the end, and I was wandering around, and after like 20 minutes of not making any progress, I decided I was going to look up how to proceed.
Did you 100% it?
I didn't check the stats after. All the things I just said, I got all of, including all the achievements, but I don't know if there was more things that the statistics would have told me I missed out on.
Right.
I helped you with one part of it.
Yeah.
I forget which thing.
It was the mouth one. It was the mouth section. I didn't know how to get the little dancing uvula to stop dancing so I could get past him.
Yeah, I never get it.
Yeah, apparently that character is from something else. That's like a cameo. How far did you make it, Christian? What things did you experience?
Well, today I actually made it to the mansion, and I finally got the magnifying glass so I could be little and get the paint bucket, and then I got the ID from the library, so I made it to the accident place. That place, I was like, oh my god, this is what happened.
Yeah.
Because, you're running through, and then it got all foggy, and then I was like, that's me on the ground right there. What is this? And it was kind of trippy. And I was like, is the game over? Like, no, it wasn't over then. But I think those were all the new places. I think that I didn't know there was a well in the desert because it has this weird loop thing, Yeah. But I finally found the well. So yeah, the new things were like the magnifying glass and the glasses in the mansion and the ID card. I think that was pretty much...
Yeah.
And the becoming a fish, the seashell necklace, and doing that. I did a lot of new stuff today.
Yeah.
But sadly, I did not make it to the end.
Yeah. So, what was your impression going in? None of us knew anything about it, so I guess the real question is, what were your first impressions when you started up, when you wake up on a little grass pedestal in the middle of nowhere?
I was charmed by it. I liked the style, and I liked its commitment to dream physics and dream logic. That was kind of a pain in the ass sometimes, because that makes for a difficult game experience, but I don't know, I was charmed by it, and it was just strange enough to encourage exploring and, like, putting up with the sometimes obtuse puzzles.
Yeah, I started off initially very confused because it took me a while to even understand the controls.
Yeah.
I found the initial player experience to be very unwelcoming.
Yeah.
You press spacebar to bring up the selection wheel, and left and right correspond to clockwise and counterclockwise, which means if you are dealing with something at the bottom, you want to push the opposite of the direction you want it to go. So that was confusing, but it took me a little while to finally understand why I was confused by that. And then I had to look up that you jump with Z and you interact with X.
Yep.
Random.
And
yeah.
So there was a little bit of like just I do not understand this game. Time to dig in and find out what is happening.
Yeah, there was definitely a bit of wrestling with the controls, especially with the confusing jump and the item wheel. That messed me up on some of the jumping sections because I would accidentally unequip the umbrella and then fall into the water.
Yeah,
which isn't dangerous at all. There's no lose state to this game.
Yeah,
Nice.
even danger states, even fail states, just take you back to the beginning of the thing. It just resets your progress.
Yeah.
So if you get hit by the lava, for instance, it just takes you back to the start of it.
Which isn't far. It's like maybe a screen away at most.
Yeah.
I read a tiny little summary of it before I started that just said that she was in a coma, so you had to figure out how to wake up or something. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. So that was my impression. And I agree with you that the fact that it was a dream, and so it made things like dreamlike, was pretty entertaining. The one thing that was cool but also kind of annoying was those ones where you would have to fall and you just kind of keep falling until you find something to land on. So when you go through the upside down and into the TV, and then it sounds like static and it's like all shaky and dark, and I got really scared because of the static sound. I think that sound just always scares me for some reason. So
it sort of grates at you.
Yeah, it was so
creates anxiety.
disturbing. And I could not like keep going. It was just like messing with me, so I had to turn the sound off, and then I was okay to roam free and figure out how to get through it.
Yeah, there were actually a couple of stages where I just didn't want to go back to them because they made me anxious. That kept me actually from progressing in the game. Like that area, right? I didn't figure out that you had to fall a bunch to get to the spaceship or whatever for a long time, and then another space that I just didn't go back to because it made me so anxious was the part where the lava starts to creep up in the caves. I was like, I don't want to deal with that. Like, there's no real danger there, but I don't like it. It's bad.
Yeah, and in that part, which seems to be one of the only places where this happens, the camera tilts as you progress through the level, which I think adds a lot of tension. It's a nice little touch.
I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
It was cool. It just made me unhappy. I didn't want to be there.
Yeah, there's a lot of little touches in this game that are really strong artistically, but I don't know what it all adds up to, right? Like, you've got the fish that you can be, and you travel through a toilet. Like, all right, I can figure out a story of why a fish would travel through a toilet, but I don't know why that takes you to a club, or why when you go outside that club, there's a moment of talking to the little alien girl, and distract the bouncer from me, and you do that, and then she goes in and apparently slaughters everybody. Yeah. All this stuff is dreamlike, so it's okay that it's disconnected. I'm just not sure that I've been able to follow it all. I wonder if that's the purpose of it. Like, I like that it's called Dreaming Sarah because it gives the game license to put together a lot of intriguing things without actually having to connect them. Like the scene with the girl getting past the bouncer, or everything that's happening in the mansion, right? There's just a ghost who's just chilling there. It's like, I think I'm late for work, but it doesn't matter because I'm dead. Or, like, being able to get real small whenever.
I didn't find myself trying to connect everything. I just wanted to know the big picture of, like, the object of the game and, like, what big reveal would there be at the end if there was one. But, like, me and myself, like, I dream a lot, and they're very vivid, and sometimes they're connected, or I'll go back to another place I've been in another dream, but then sometimes it's like completely random. So to me it makes sense because usually your dreams are kind of like little things from your life. They're just random spots that your mind processes in its own way. So to me, I'm like, this makes perfect sense. It's a dream. Yeah. You just go through and almost exclusively make things worse for people. They're the only ones that I can think of where you make things better is you give the kid his hat back and then he turns into a portal. Then you go through that portal and then you end up in the desert. There are a couple of NPCs who are just in areas that are like, oh, you're lost, huh? That's funny. We're just there to make fun of you. Yeah.
Those are great.
Or that girl that's standing next to the windmill and like, this is a weird plant.
Yeah, I don't know what her deal was.
She has no purpose.
It is a weird plant. It's a very weird plant.
When you move back and forth between those screens, the plant will increase in speed.
Mm-hmm.
Get faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
Till it's like a helicopter almost.
And I think she's the one who ends up operating the lemonade stand that gives you the orange juice, or is it a new character?
I don't know. It looks like a new character, but I didn't go back another screen to see if the blonde was still at the plant. So it might have been.
I did not get to the juice stand, but that's where you get the orange juice for the mouth, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to look up.
Which
stuff
then
online.
immediately gives the tonsils a tummy ache, and then you can go past him because you're like, oh.
So mean.
Just nothing but mean. Let's talk about the mechanics. What do you do in this game? For me, that answer was look for anything you can interact with in the hopes of being able to collect a new item to fill out your wheel that would give you a new power to be able to progress somewhere else.
Yes.
And then you get a lot of items that act as keys. So the hat is a key, the ID is a key, and the bullet. Some of those, like the bullet, is a key to a secret as opposed to a key to critical path. So the bullet, if you take it to the piano player in the bar, I guess she shoots herself or something like that. Whereas the ID, if you take it to the bartender in the bar, he'll be like, is that you? Okay. And then you get the squiggly lines. I actually had found the ID before, and so I didn't understand why he was saying, is that you? I was like, well, of course it's me. Why are we questioning if it's me? Because it wasn't clear to me that an ID was being looked at. I thought it was like, is it really
looking at you?
Is it
being like
is it really you to have a drink right now? It's like, yeah, give me a drink. Is that you though? Give me a drink, man.
Yeah.
And then you pass out and you go to the car crash sequence with the cute little skeleton bones. Those are from Mario, aren't they?
I didn't recognize them that they were
old bones.
I feel like their head was pretty small if that was the case. Aren't the bones in Mario like the Koopas or whatever? The like turtles?
Yeah. So it was a variation on it, or at least it seemed to me to be an homage to that. How was the gameplay mechanic taught, or was it?
What do you mean?
How did you go from not knowing anything about this game to understanding what you needed to do to progress?
Google.
I think there was a very brief tutorial at the very beginning that was just like pop-ups that said, use arrow keys to move and then use this to jump and this to interact.
Really?
I think so.
I
Either that or was it just
I think I had to look that up. Yeah.
But then everything else I figured.
But I think that part of what it does well, for instance, giving the hat to the kid unlocking a portal is like, okay, this game is going to involve connecting random things to get unexpected outcomes. Same with the seeds that you plant and then now you can float up on the upstream.
Mm-hmm. Very adventure game logic stuff.
Yeah, moon logic, as they've started calling it.
Why'd they call it moon logic?
Well, because it's disconnected from Earth.
But it makes sense in the game?
Yeah, it's like...
That's fair.
Yeah, this doesn't represent any connection you would make in your life, but this is just how it works, so just follow it. And so it's just a matter of going through and seeing what connections you can make. And I don't know, because on the one hand, I found that process very frustrating sometimes. But on the other hand, I said sometimes. Sometimes it totally made sense in a way, despite not making sense. Like, Christian didn't know about the orange juice being the key, and there's no way to have known to look for that, but the moment that I said orange juice, you made the connection that you need to take it to the mouth. I didn't make that connection.
Oh, actually, no. I'm not that smart. I read that.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Because I had no idea.
I think the disconnect there, at least in my experience, was when I would get to sort of the logical conclusion of, like, a quote-unquote quest. Like, once I'd gotten an object or a new item, then trying to figure out where I was supposed to go from there. If I didn't have a clear, I know what this unlocks. For instance, I don't think the orange juice stand is triggered by anything in particular. It's not like, you restart the orange juice factory and now the stand is up. It just sort of appears randomly.
Where is it?
Yeah, it's on the main area, like just to the right. It's not there most of the time. It just appears one day. And there's a lot of things about this game that rely on you going somewhere else to trigger it. Mm-hmm. Like in the desert, for instance, you start off with the compass. and the compass tells you to go back the way you came, and that back the way you came is a new place that takes you to the well, that takes you to the volcano area, or the lava area. And it's those sorts of non-linear connections that honestly made it really, really difficult for me to get back to the mansion when I realized a lot later that I had missed something. I finally went back to the mansion to try out again, and I found a different path to go, and that was how I got the heart key. However, all that said, when we were talking about this earlier in the week, and we were like, well, where are you? What have you done? What did you need help with? I was shocked by how much of the game I could just recall. And be like, oh, okay, you need the ID, so you're going to have to go to this planet to get it, and you have to go back to the mansion and use the glasses to do the thing. And there is a through line here. And I think it's really interesting that when talking about it, it feels very much like you're describing a dream. Mm-hmm. So to that end, it mechanically mirrors its theme. I wish it had been a little bit less frustrating to experience, but it also has this really interesting tone about it as a consequence of that.
Did y'all see the cat in the mansion?
No.
Yeah, I saw the secret cat.
So there's, when you collect... what item is this for? It's
the glasses?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's for the heart. It's after you get the heart key.
Yeah, it's for the heart key. So, once you have the glasses, then you can go into... because it makes things that are invisible visible. Which also means that you can see in the dark. And it's kind of a shame that you'd never have an application for these glasses elsewhere in the game. It just doesn't come up. But that's beside the point.
Well, it comes up for at least a secret. When you're in the desert, you'll see aliens.
Ah, what? That's cool.
Yeah, they're just standing there watching you.
Oh, man.
Really creepy.
This game's good. But, like, once you collect all the stars, then you just sort of keep heading that way, at the very bottom. And you can go and talk to a little slime buddy who's like, haven't I seen you here before? But...
that's the last thing I was gonna do, but then I was like, I have to do more stuff today. And I didn't get to.
And then in a passage where I think you have to be small to get to it, there's this giant cat who has been like beheaded, and its brain is sitting next to it, and it's just sort of like lying there.
That's nasty.
It's very creepy.
Yeah, there's a lot of strange imagery in this game, but it all has that feeling of being somehow relevant to something. Yeah. Even it being super random.
It does feel like what you were talking about, Christian, of like a dream being all these different like small parts of your experience, like the rest of your life. That's sort of what it felt like. Mm-hmm. Is remixing all of these concepts that were in Sarah's actual world.
Yeah. And when you start seeing all the stuff pop up of like all the things that go wrong, of, you know, the death, and that happens a couple of places. Where else? Because it's not just the club. I feel like there was another spot that you go into. Or maybe I'm just thinking about the piano player.
Could be.
The guy who loses his umbrella at the beginning, and then you go get the umbrella, and then you come back and he's gone. I read somewhere.
I don't remember that.
I didn't associate. I was just like, oh, he's gone. I can keep the umbrella.
Yeah. There is some scenario that can satisfy that when you leave the caves by being small, and you go out that little area, that guy will be there, and he'll have a large leaf, and he'll be like, oh, I found my umbrella.
Oh, that's cute!
It was like, oh, wasn't your umbrella. Okay. Interesting.
But he never came back. He never came back.
Yeah, I just read somewhere that that's the thing that can happen, is that you can find him again later, and he'll have found his umbrella, and it's actually just a large leaf. Or like, in the stuff that happens after how far you've made it, there's the hospital that you go to.
There's the receptionist who just has... It's like this big cylindrical person with this placid smile on their face, and just a big old chunk of their skull cut out, and they're just like slowly dripping blood from the big old hole in their head. And they're the one who's like, take a seat, the doctor will see you shortly.
Did you take a seat?
I did take a seat, yes.
Me too.
I was like, this is the thing that I have to do.
I like that you can just sit in this game.
The proprietary sit button is good.
And then she's like, man, the doctor's really taking a while, isn't he?
Yeah.
You should go look for him.
He's like stuck in the snack machine.
Yeah.
He's like, I definitely was here on purpose. Thank you for finding me.
And then he'll give you his watch, which will let you slow down time. And with that, you can get past the crusher in the water.
Aha!
Yeah.
It was like, there's no way.
There's nothing past there, though.
There's nothing past there.
There's a rock that gives you a rock joke.
Yeah.
It's like, what did one rock say to the other? And it's like, times are hard.
So you
That's
do
something
all
really
that
good
to get
rock
the
band.
watch, and then there's nothing.
No, you need that to finish the game.
Yeah.
But it's
that puzzle, it was the first thing that I encountered when I went to the hospital. It's you go into one of the bathrooms, I think the men's room, and it's just a row of spikes that are moving very quickly up and down, and I'm like, this is relatable. And you can't get through it without the watch, and the watch slows down time.
That's exactly what bathrooms are like, though.
Yeah. In my experience, that's exactly what a men's room looks like.
Yeah. And so you slow down time and you get past them, and then you come to a bridge.
And there's a little old lady on the bridge who's like, are you sure you want to go do this? Because this is the last thing in the game. It isn't phrased like this is the last thing in the game, but that's what she's trying to say.
Yeah. And I was 90% sure that's what she was trying to say, and then I was like, I'll just do it anyway. Even though I had not yet gone through the water crusher. Mm-hmm. So I had to go back after this to do that. And because of that, I don't know that I paid close enough attention to the actual ending.
Yeah, me too. It's really interesting, too, because there's like a gap in the bridge that is how you exit. And the implication is that she jumps, but she just like sort of floats up from there, and then the screen goes black. So instead of like having an animation of her like taking a running jump off of this bridge, it sort of implied the idea of her being underwater. And then one by one, all of the items go like spin really quickly in a circle and disappear. And then she wakes up in a hospital room, and she's got like a little bouquet of blue flowers in one corner, and she's back.
I knew she was gonna wake up in a hospital.
Yeah.
She was in a coma. She had some sort of car trauma. Did she get shot?
Do you think she was trying to swerve out of the way of ducks and she killed them anyway?
That's a very strong theory.
Because you find the bullet there, and you see that there's a hole in the windshield.
I thought that was just her flying out of the windshield.
I thought so too, but then the bullet being there, I don't know.
I think that the bullet in all of the cases where she actively makes the world worse is just a bunch of like guilt that she's working through. That is probably connected to the car crash.
Because when the way that you leave that place is there's like a memorial totem that shows up there. So
is that what it was?
I think so.
Yeah, it's this big stone gray statue thing. Mm-hmm. It's like a cylindrical, and it has these different like sculpted tears. I like tears as in levels, not crying.
Maybe for you. Let's talk about the art.
Sure.
Go, artist.
So this is all pixel art, and I don't think it's 8-bit. I think it's like a much wider palette than that. But everything's pixelated, everything's 2D side-scroller stuff. There are a lot of really good atmospheric effects that are in play. The sort of gentle fog of the main staging area, which is all green, like forest and hills and stuff. In a couple of spaces, another one being the static area, right? Which is all...
Really?
Yeah, because of the red and then the constant jitter of the screen itself on the red and on black, and it's very anxiety-inducing, as you covered. Mm-hmm. Some of the other spaces that were really cool were the weird, like, mirror floor going up to the TV, and then also the tower with all the eyes in it.
Yeah, that was really cool.
And I really liked the pink planet. It was cool.
Yeah, and where you walk around upside down.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did you take the lid off the trash can?
Yeah.
So good.
It just sort of floats away.
Yeah.
And then you touch a bunny and you get an achievement for it.
Oh, really?
What?
It's like, you touched the bunny.
I didn't even know there was a bunny.
I knew there was a bunny, but there was no little exclamation point mark.
Yeah.
So I was like, I guess I can't interact with it, and I went on my way.
Was there ever a point where crouching was important? Because there was a button to do it.
No. I never crouched for a single reason. She
only crouched by herself once when the lava was about to come up.
That's right, yeah.
But I was like, that's not helping here.
Come on, Sarah.
But yeah, this game is really pretty. It is really ethereal, and the gameplay track of it being a side-scroller had some really interesting implications because it repeated screens a bunch. So if you kept running to the right, you would go past, like, for instance, in the mansion, right? You would go past the mansion and then to sort of the other side of the map and then past the mansion again, so you were on this unbroken circuit, which you can't really do in a different game. It was a cool strength of having it be a side-scroller and sort of added to the dreamscape of it.
Yeah, I thought everything looked really cool. And each time you went to a new place, it was like, oh, this is so awesome.
Yeah.
It was just really exciting to look at. And because they weren't just like typical places, because it was, a dream, so it was more artistic, it was really cool. Even like if you were falling and there was the black shapes and whatever other color, and it was like wavy, it was like really nice.
Yeah.
I liked the music.
Oh, the music's so good. At one point, I was playing and I got stuck somewhere, and I just sort of left it on in the background while I was doing other stuff. Just like listening to the jams, because the songs in this are so good. And audio design is really good too, like the static that you were talking about, and like the little noises of interacting with things and selecting something on the wheel. The audio design, it's just really good to listen to.
I liked a lot of the camera effects that they did. The swirling that happens when you get drunk
so good.
Goes really well with also the way that your character slows down. I loved flopping around as a fish. That's just a good. It's just a good.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. It reminded me of this Finding Nemo video game I used to play. I was like, this is so cool!
Were you flopping around as a fish in Finding Nemo?
I don't know if it was as flopping that this fish did, but it was still cool. And I was avoiding the mines like so hard because in Finding Nemo, if you touch the mines, like you blow up and you die.
Oh yeah, same
yeah.
here.
I avoided them for a little while, and then I was like, actually, I bet these don't do anything.
Because there were certain parts where I couldn't go because I was like, I'll blow up. There's the mines, but you could just swim right past them.
Yeah,
just go into that area.
Yeah. And then there's a torpedo down there, just lodged into a wall. There's the anchor down, which I think is actually the only other thing that's over there by the rock that you get to.
Yeah.
Was the rock joke. The other anchor. Yeah, there's a lot of tiny stories in this game. I think that's probably the strongest aspect of it. How do you feel about the storytelling? Did you feel like a story was told?
No. Because if I didn't know that she was in a coma, then I wouldn't have known there was any kind of story. I would have thought it was sort of like an Alice in Wonderland thing. Because I was playing it while I was talking to my little sister on the phone because she heard the music, and I was like, yeah, it's this cool game that we're in a dream. So, yeah, she just kept comparing it to Alice in Wonderland, and so that's kind of like the concept you would connect it to if you didn't really know what was going on.
Yeah, it's a really good touchstone for this game, for sure.
Yeah, that sort of allegory, almost. And I wish I had more insight into what this game was saying all the time.
It kind of reminds me of just on a larger scheme, like a puzzle, or like a Rubik's Cube or something.
Yeah.
That if you like really spent the time and got to know the game and with all its ins and outs, like went on the forums or whatever and read up on it, then you might have a chance at it. But it's also not something, like the story of this game is not something I'm particularly interested in solving. I think the presentation of all the different kinds of imagery in different spaces, like the space where you get the pill, for instance, and the little chorus of wilting things that are like, please don't do it.
Yeah, it basically comes out to being there's enough moving parts that the story gets to web between those things and create that space so that you have the various symbols that come up, the various characters and environments that you can read into and that are basically just enough to tide you over until you find the next thing that's happened. Which is really important because you're basically locked until a new thing happens because there's not a lot of logic, or at least not a lot of obvious logic in terms of how things are going to progress. So you have to kind of wander around and try stuff. What was the thing I had you do to unlock the orange juice?
Oh god, I don't remember.
I think I just had you get the key.
Yeah, I think that was it. Honestly, I think that was it. Getting the key gets you back to the bouncer's hut, because it has the same heart shape on the door. And then I think that was
Is that the bouncer's hut?
Yeah, or at least he was sitting in front of it.
So he's
when you first meet him.
I thought the bouncer was the pirate.
Pirate?
No.
What pirate guy?
The one who, when you go to the desert again, makes fun of you for being lost.
I didn't think they were the same person.
No, I don't.
I thought that was the guy. Oh.
No, I'm pretty sure if you go back to the desert, that dude is still there making fun of you because you're lost.
Well, shows what I know.
When I was in the desert and I was like in the water and swimming, I never paid attention to what the water sounded like before this moment. So to me, it sounded like the water was sizzling. And I was like, I'm going to boil because it's really hot. We're in the desert. We should not be in the water. Because it was just making like a sizzling sound.
Yeah.
But, it turned out okay. And then when I was in water in a different part, like in the forest, I was like, oh, this is just what the water sounds like.
That's some hot water, though.
Yeah, you are in the desert. That would make sense.
There are a couple of mechanics that are in place to help guide you through the game. The first mechanic at all is the umbrella, which you hold jump after you jump and you umbrella glide your way down to things. And so you get to...
helpful.
Yeah, you get to stay in the air longer and move slower, and so you're able to cross longer distances. And so if you see a thing you couldn't get to, you try to umbrella to it.
Yeah, that helps a bunch in the following puzzles.
Yeah.
So you can sort of control your fall.
And that also helps hint you towards things to do. So in terms of like getting events to happen, that sort of guides you through the areas you need to go to find the things you need to interact with. And then there's the magnifying glass. And so anytime you see a small hole, you're like, I should magnifying glass and go into that. You have the same thing with the fish in water, the seashells. And then for the more esoteric things, you have the compass. I wish that the compass would just stay on screen.
Yeah.
Because it's not super fun to go back to the inventory to trigger the compass and realize that I've accidentally put away the umbrella in the meantime. But that helps guide you to things that you wouldn't otherwise know about. Like, I only found the weird voodoo doll thing because of that. And so that...
The blockhead?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that helps with the remaining abstraction, the remaining elements of things that are just by their nature arbitrary, but you have to find them anyway. So between those, I do feel like it does a decent job of guiding you through its environment to find what there is to find. Because I made it through most of the game before I needed help, just using those things. It's not quite all pieced together in a way to make it perfectly natural, perfectly intuitive, but it almost got me all the way through. And it's only like a 90-minute game.
Yeah.
No. Not for me. I'm still gonna go back and play it because I'm very intrigued by this game. But no, it takes, I don't know, just for me, I have to be more patient and be more thorough.
Yeah, because there's always one solution to basically all these things. Like this game is super, super linear. You only ever have one challenge ahead of you, and you have one solution to that challenge. And figuring out what both of those things are is not always intuitive or clear.
Yeah, it's more of an adventure game than a puzzle game.
Yeah, definitely.
But even then, you don't combine things. You just go to the thing that you've unlocked, essentially.
Yeah.
Which is all very simple, and then it's presented in this simple way, and it's just kind of a nice and kind of quiet experience. I feel like mechanically it's peaceful.
Yeah, 100%.
The story that it alludes to is not peaceful. It is often dark. But
yeah, I really appreciated the tone of this game. Sort of the combination of the silly and fun character designs and the really beautiful, very strong aesthetics. Each screen was completely devoted to whatever it was trying to say, whether it was the spooky tower with all the eyes in it, or the mansion, or the desert, or the road. So that in conjunction with the fact that there's no fail state in this game, there's no way to sabotage yourself. If you end up in like a dangerous situation, your little character makes like a squeaky toy noise and then puts you back a little bit.
Yeah. And
it's like instant. Like if you fall into the lava, it'll just put you back on the ledge. And having low stakes like that really helped encourage exploring more and putting yourself in weirder positions to find out what the next thing was.
Yeah, I think that helped a lot, because if you would have had to start from like the forest or something, I probably would have quit a lot too. Well, just for the lava one, because I fell in the lava a lot. So I don't think I would have been able to complete that if it had been where you had to go back a lot farther.
I mean, one space where this isn't true is when you are loading back into the game. It always puts you back at the same starting point. You'll have all the gear that you've developed, and the world will be different still because of your involvement, but it'll always put you, like, you can't just, like, save at the mansion. You have to go back there if you reload.
I kept wanting the game to get more traditional, I guess. Or more systemic. I really liked being able to plant the seed and then you get an updraft, and then I was like, oh cool, I'm going to use this to do whatever, and this will combine with something else, and I'll need to flip a switch that'll move a thing to whatever. But that never really happens. Really, those things are just gates to get back and forth.
Yeah.
Or the other one is the path down to the television. Requires you to open a gate, which needs you to set 3 signs on different screens to a certain thing, and it just shows you what that is.
Right.
And I was expecting more puzzles like that, where it's like, okay, find the thing that needs a thing that will tell you what it needs, and then go figure out how to accomplish that.
Yeah.
But while those things might make it a little bit more about this feeling of discovery or invention, it feels like there was something important to the developer about guiding you through arbitrary experiences. And this would definitely take away from that. maybe that's what gives this such a dreamlike quality, is that it uses the mechanics to tell you where you can go, and then when you get there, you just find random things. And probably the only places where that falls apart is where it requires you to revisit a place, and there's no way to know that.
Yeah.
Because in all the other cases, I think it did a really good job of guiding you through from that puzzle that I just described where you open up the door to get into the cave, to being in the upside down space, to being inside the TV, to going to the rocket ship, to going into the bar, to getting drunk, to going... Like, that, everything I just said is insane.
Yeah.
But that flow perfectly worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that there is a lot to be said for that idea of arbitrary association. That seems like a really powerful thing. That it seems to me, at least, to be the goal of the game, is to create these arbitrary associations.
Yeah, it was either you're following this thread of things that the game's showing you, or you need to go back to the starting area of the grain space and see what's changed. That was always my experience with it. So, you know the grandfather clock that appears? Did anything ever happen with the tower next to it that you could climb?
Not for me. I never found a reason for it to be there.
Vines, right? Yeah, no.
I thought that was to teach you that you could climb things, but then you never climb things.
I mean, you do in the caves.
The ladder.
There's ladders.
That's true. Ladders. But I thought that there would be, like, environments you have to climb similar to the vines, and that wasn't the case. So, I don't know. It was just one of those arbitrary things.
I guess that serves the same purpose as the weird plant did, right?
Yeah. Just to let you know that, hey, here's a weird thing. Somebody should have come over and been like, this is a weird vine. And they would have been like, yeah, it is.
He's got a lampshade that.
Just let you know. And so to that end, I do feel like the aesthetics serve the story, serve the experience anyway, of having pretty things arbitrarily juxtaposed, sometimes commented on, but mostly just accepted.
Yeah. One of the strengths of pixel art is there's a lot that is gestured at and not defined. For instance, like, think about, like, a 3D model. You have a lot of space there to get into detail, but with a sprite, you have maybe 16 pixels tall that you can get into a character. And so everything has to be gestured at rather than firmly defined. Like, Sarah has little eyes that blink, but the animation for that is going from 2 sprites tall to 1 sprite, and then back up to 2 to...
Pixels, you mean?
Yeah. So, 2 pixels tall to 1, and then it's not an eye closing, you know?
Yeah.
And because what you're doing there is gesturing at a thing and letting the viewer fill it in, it gives a lot more space for interpretation and puts the viewer's imagination to work a little bit more, which is always something you want to do, because their imagination is so much better than your engine.
I always thought it was interesting the way some areas had water underneath the ground.
Yeah.
Maybe that was to show that was water that was closer to the camera.
I thought it was kind of like a way to take the danger out of it. Like, here's water. There is water in this game. Here it is, not hurting you. And you can just sort of jump into it and be in water.
Well, no, but not even that. But where there's collision.
Yeah.
And then below that collision, there's water. And there's no way to get into that water.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Just sort of introducing it early.
And the reason that I think it might be a foreshortening element is because when it shows up on the island, and that happens there too. And so the water just continues as the land comes out of it, but the water remains in front of it. So that makes it seem like, oh, that's water in front of the thing. But maybe not. Maybe it's by a lake. Maybe it's by the water table underneath.
But I never read that as water that was in the foreground. But they do have foreground elements, like on the road. There are sections like the grass in the front does parallax to imply that it's in the foreground. So you might not be wrong.
Water seems to be an important theme in this game somehow. But I don't know how. So, that's Dreaming Sarah. Did you like it? Did you enjoy your experience with it?
Yes.
Yes. I liked...
It's a couple quiet yeses.
No, I really... Solid yes. I enjoyed it. And I found that my frustration was not at the game, but it was more at myself, because it was like, you have to be more patient. You have to explore more. You can't just find one thing and be like, I'm done with this entire realm. Let's move on. Thank you. Because that was kind of
I have conquered the world.
Yeah, I just wanted to move through it kind of quickly because I was so excited to see the next thing. But you have to be like more patient with it. So, but I liked everything about it. Really.
Would you recommend it to others?
I would. I don't know if others would find it as entertaining. I feel like personally it's so entertaining for me because like I dream so much, and so it was just like kind of relatable, even though it's different, obviously. But yeah.
And it was a yes from you too.
It was a tentative yes. I liked the parts where I wasn't stuck. Whenever I felt like I knew what I was going to do next, I liked that. But I had a lot of space in this game that was me being frustrated and not knowing where to go or what to do, and trying to figure out, okay, what haven't I done yet? What sections did I decide not to do? I should go do those now. That wasn't enjoyable, and I probably wouldn't play this again. Like, I compared this to a puzzle earlier, and I can see how exploring this game and figuring out how all the, like, narrative puzzles and all the different secrets in it, like, going and trying out different objects to try and trigger these secrets would be cool. Like, I would love to go back to that horrible cat and turn into a fish and see if that triggered anything.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Like, similar to how when you're in the room with all the eyes and you go in front of where the giant eye, if you shrink, the people will shrink.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it happens.
It's just a cool thing that happens. But getting to those points was so frustrating and unfun for me that I probably wouldn't go back and try and figure out other stuff. I would probably recommend this to someone and then also be like, hey, hit me up if you get stuck.
Yeah, this is definitely a game that I think is improved by having a hint button.
Yeah.
Just because getting stuck can be miserable because you don't know what to do because it deals in the arbitrary so completely that you're like, well, I have no idea, and I guarantee the game will have given me no idea by the time I find it.
Yeah. Like being able to reach out and be like, hey, where is this thing on the clock level? I can't find it.
Yeah, that helps. So go in with a friend, I guess. I enjoyed it too. I think I was initially put off by the game by its unintuitive nature, but ultimately I enjoyed it. I don't think I would play it again. They're talking about having a sequel called Awakening Sarah.
Ooh.
They mentioned that on their blog. Would you play the sequel?
Yeah, I would play the sequel. I wonder...
What do you wonder?
I just wonder how they're going to do it. Like, is it going to be like now her navigating reality, or is there still going to be like this weird part to it? Like, maybe her brain's not completely healed and she's like seeing some freaky stuff, or maybe she's trying to put together like what happened to her.
Like we are?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The game, except instead of playing as Sarah in her dream, we're playing as you.
We're playing as you playing Dreaming Sarah. And you can come back to play that game with hints. What can we learn from this game? Would you make a game like this? Or does this inspire something?
I think that if I were going to make a game like this, it would be inspiring in that I would see how creative I could really be. Mm-hmm. So there wouldn't be like some pressure of creating like a typical, like, what do you call it? Side walking game?
Side-scroller.
Yeah. So yes, side-scrolling game. Because I think that if I did have a game, it would be more like kind of abstract like that.
You don't want to have another conventional sidewalker.
Yeah, where you punch things or jump over things.
Those are side punches. I'm kidding.
What?
I'm kidding.
So yeah, it was like really cool. I'm glad that you can create games that are like kind of weird and they still be like fun and enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I really like what you were saying before about the game being about pulling a thread. I do think that that's the thing that I liked the most about it, was that sense of discovery that doesn't connect to anything. That sense of like, just strap in for the ride. It gets weird from here. And if I were to try to make something that focused on the arbitrary like that I would try to double down on some of the stuff that they did, of really strongly beacon which things are going to trigger something.
Yeah. And
be like, okay, here is where the key would have done that if it was used that way, but like I see this red door with a heart shape on it all over the place. I'm like, oh, I can't get through that. But then when some other thread brings me to the key, I instantly remember all the places I've seen the key, and I'm like, time to go find out what those trigger. Mm-hmm. And then you start pulling that thread, and then it brings you to all these other arbitrary things, connections you couldn't have made, but you didn't have to because you made the connection to the door. And I think that's where this game is strongest, and I would want to follow that idea to do more things like... Because like when I was a fish, I was like, oh, I remember that there's that thing that I had to jump over where the bridge was broken. Mm-hmm. I'm going to swim down there, and that's where an anchor is. And anytime that things cascade out of an idea I feel both that I've made a connection and also that I've been pulled along for this arbitrary journey that is very dreamlike and very surreal. And so I think that to me, I would want to try to get some more systemic elements in just so that I could really have a strong foundation for making those leaps of logic that can then drive you through all of the surrealist abstraction and all of the threads. Because I liked the way that you described that. Pull the string.
Yeah. I think if I had like a specific dream that stuck with me, I would definitely use this as a way to sort of retell it. And in the sort of way that telling someone else your dream or listening to someone else's dream isn't particularly interesting. And even while you're saying the dream that you had, it's like you had to be there. It was so affecting. But if there was an engine that I could just sort of drag and drop these things and make sprites really quickly and make an experience like this very quickly, then I could see like keeping a dream journal this way.
That would be wild.
Yeah.
I would love to use Media Molecule's dreams for that purpose.
Yeah.
But I just want to play with their tools. I am so excited for that.
We'll probably also add in some of Brendan Chung's jump cut stuff.
Which I think you kind of get here by the way that interactions can arbitrarily just jump you to a different place.
Yeah.
It's always triggered by the player.
Yeah.
In this case. You get the bus pass or whatever, and it'll take you to a different place or what have you.
That's the only time you ever use the bus.
Yeah.
It's getting from the club.
Same thing as with the key.
Yeah.
From the mansion to that guy's door. There's a bunch of things that just unlock one door. It's alright, cool. Glad that happened. But yeah, that's Dreaming Sarah. That's by Asteristic Game Studio, which again is appears to be a Brazilian game studio, which is kind of cool to have more global entertainment going.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to The Backlog. Rate and subscribe and tell everybody. And also email us if you have any questions, insights, or anecdotes. The other week we got this really great story about Banner Saga, so we got to do that. So if you've had an experience with Dreaming Sarah, let us know about it. Or if you've figured out what the story is,
please tell us.
Tell us.
Give us that hot scoop.
I'd like to know. Next week, Sasha has us playing The Oil Blue.
Yeah.
You want to tell us about that?
So The Oil Blue is a clicker game, like Kitten's game, which would be very funny to cover.
I really love the Kitten's game.
Kitten's game is really good.
It's dumb how much time I've put into that.
Like Cookie Clicker was big like a year ago or something. It's just a thing that you interact with by clicking, and it has some timers that you need to keep track of. And The Oil Blue is about going to these islands and bringing these old oil rigs up to speed and getting to know how to operate them, and it's very good and I like it a lot. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, so if you have any insights into The Oil Blue, send us your questions or stories at backlog@tcabbage.com. And I said next week, but really that'll be in 2 weeks, because we do a bi-weekly release on that, and we'll do the back order next week.
If we get emails.
If we get emails. So send those emails in, and we will have more episodes. It's all on you.
You're the future.